Previously, I made this fairly simple little page here. It just shows how to fold an origami hat, and I've talked about it a little bit in some of the other videos. Now, this is based on sort of like that old style technology, so it's using a lot of the older code. The images have been toned down quite a bit and are using a very limited color palette, as you might see back then. Another aspect of that time period, though, was also transfer speeds, right? So how fast could your modem, because that's what we used at the time, actually transfer data? And it wasn't very fast. So a lot of design work was also based on trying to keep file sizes low and to keep not that much data on pages, so that way they would actually load before someone got tired of waiting for them to load. Now, there were different tricks to this that we can talk about, and as we got further into the 90s, better modems started coming out. Around the time that this code, this sort of HTML2-ish set of tags and elements was being used, was around the time that we had only up to 28.8K modems. So how can we actually simulate that? How can we see how this would have actually loaded at that time period? We can't do it on the computer by itself, at least not easily, but we can do it with Chrome, assuming that this website is actually hosted somewhere, not just locally. So if I take all of my files and I actually upload them to an FTP, so I've created a little folder here just called Hattie, and I was testing our PHP feedback form in there, so I'll go ahead and get rid of those because I don't need them, and I'll upload all of this to it. The length of time that it takes depends on how large your files are, and of course, how fast your connection is and all that stuff. Nothing in here is super large, and my connection itself is pretty fast, so that was pretty quick. So now what I can do is I can go to my page that I've uploaded. But before I do that, I need to make a few changes in here. We can simulate that old like 28.8K speed, or even slower if we want to, in Chrome pretty easily. So if we right click and we tell it to inspect, we get all this stuff, right? But the important one is network. At least the important one for what we're doing right now is network. And here on the right side, if you don't see it, you might need to make this a little bit bigger, because you won't always see it depending on how large your window is. But make that big enough so you can actually see up here where it says online. This little drop down arrow, you can click on that, and you can actually add in a custom speed to like throttle whatever you're loading. So we can add custom profile. We can say 28.8K modem, or you can call it whatever you want. So download speed would be 28.8K. Your up speed was not likely to be the same. Maybe if you were lucky, you might have half the up speed. And then latency, if you had good latency, that might be 100 milliseconds. Now it's a lot lower than that, but that would be a good one at the time. 220 might be a little bit more realistic. This is also rather utopian, so to speak. The likelihood that you actually got 28.8K wasn't very likely. If you want something a little bit more realistic, I don't know, try maybe 20 or so. That 28.8K modem, that was that your speeds could be up to that, but it still depends on how well your ISP is actually doing, meeting that expectation, as well as the server you're requesting data from and any of the nodes in between, any of the hops that it might take to get from that server to you. So yeah, something like that might be more realistic. Assuming that we have like great settings and everything is just peachy, we can go with that. So if I hit add, now I can click the little X here, and I can tell it that I want it to be using this 28.8K throttling setting. And now if I press enter on here, yeah, we can see that it's taking a little while to load that image. There it goes. Now, nowadays, that wouldn't be too great. Back then, people were a little bit more patient because all of this stuff was new. People are actually more impatient now than they were back then, even though we do so much more with it. Now this is kind of cool over here too. You can also see what's being requested. So the index.html page was requested, a map.jpg file was requested, and Chrome requested a favicon, but it couldn't find one. As we click on these different ones, you can see the requests in there, and you can see how long it's taking to actually load stuff. There we go. And we can do step 1, and we can wait. And you can do the next step, and you can wait. Now, this is a decent simulation for like doing something retro and seeing how it would have responded in those retro speeds. But the other thing too to keep in mind is that if you're testing something for like a wireless build, like maybe you're building a custom version of your page for mobile, being able to set your throttle speeds to something closer to what you actually might be getting or what someone else might be getting on their phone, like slow 3G, that could be useful. Because if you're not getting a whole lot of mobile traffic, that might be why. And you can actually see down here too, you can see how long it took things to download, which is pretty cool. So even something like Google, like just the basic Google, you can see how long that would take to load on this speed of modem, and it's not great, but you don't have a whole lot of that anymore. So it took 9.64 seconds, and that's all of the stuff that it requested, and that's basically barely anything at all. Although it looks like it hasn't loaded that photo yet. Yeah, it's still working on that photo. There it goes, 32 seconds. And now it's doing other stuff. So you can see the activity in here, which is fairly interesting if we were to actually do a search. It takes a while. It takes quite a while because there is a lot to load. Now, like I said, this might not be very realistic, but what if you have someone who's, possibly accessing your site out in like a rural part of a country or on a slow cell service, so like slow 3G. So it's a pretty neat little tool. Just make sure when you're done that you disable that throttler, so that way you're actually getting, your full speed again.